affirmer cette vérité. And the threats that are facing pour protéger Alors bonjour tout le monde, merci d'être tant vu pour prendre des c'est a transformational moment for Canada. The NATO Summit is fort. This NATO Summit is similarly taking place at a transformational moment for Canada and the allies of NATO. The international rules-based system on which the alliance is relied upon is under unprecedented pressure. And the threats that are facing individual member states are evolving. They differ both in their form and severity. And at the same time, Canada's own relationship with NATO is appropriately evolving. Put it in a bit of context, for over a century, Canada has been a net exporter of security to Europe. And now, with those evolving threats worldwide, the threats to our own sovereignty are becoming more acute. With increasingly open Arctic waters and rapid advances in cyber and AI and quantum, with advanced missile capacities, we can no longer rely on our geography to protect us. As the global landscape shifts, the collective security created by the alliance remains the strongest and the most effective way of protecting Canadian sovereignty and protecting the security of Canadians. So together with our allies, we must ensure that NATO remains strong, unified, and ready to confront the threats not just of today, but of tomorrow. And so, in this pursuit, Canada is helping to ensure that the alliance and the peace that it can help protect prevail. In order to do so, we must invest in our strength, because Canada's leadership must be defined not just by the strength of our values, but by the value of our strength. That's why earlier this month, Minister of Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Chief of the Defense Staff and I unveiled Canada's plan to rebuild, rearm and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces to protect, first and foremost, Canadians, to protect our interests, and also to help protect our allies. In doing so, we are reaching NATO's 2% target this year. We've arrived at this summit looking forward with a plan to help lead with new investments to build our strength. This morning, Canada, or just now, I guess it went into the afternoon, Canada and our allies agreed to a new defense investment pledge, which secures Canada's strategic and security goals. As part of that, Canada is already beginning working towards a target of 3.5% of GDP by 2035. By expanding our plan to invest in the Canadian Armed Forces, to modernize our military equipment and technology, to help build up our own defense and security industries, as well as to diversify our defense partnerships. We're also working to ensure that we are spending 1.5% of our GDP in defense and security-related infrastructure. So that means ports, airports, infrastructure to support the development and exportation of critical minerals, telecommunications, and emergency preparedness systems. These investments serve our defense as well as protecting the readiness and resilience to protect Canadians. At the core of our defense investment, of course, are the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. And as I speak to you today, Canadian troops are participating in NATO deterrence and defense missions across Central and Eastern Europe, as well as building capacity in the Middle East. As part of Operation Reassurance, Canada is leading a 14-nation strong multinational brigade with over 2,000 Canadian Armed Forces in Latvia. We're working with our allies and partners across Europe to train Ukrainian soldiers who are defending their homeland from Russia's illegal and barbaric invasion. These are the women and men we are investing in. The forces we will expand with new incentives and new recruitment efforts. Le Canada renforcera également ses capacités industrielles grâce à une stratégie vigoureuse et des partenariats internationaux. Lundi, lors du sommet Canada-Union européenne, nous avons conclu le nouveau partenariat de sécurité et de défense entre le Canada et l'Union européenne. Ce partenariat est la première des deux étapes menant à la participation du Canada à l'initiative Agir pour la sécurité en Europe, un instrument du plan REARM Europe. Cela nous permettra d'atteindre nos objectifs plus rapidement et à moins coût. Canada does have enormous industrial capacity, but that will grow significantly. As our allies seek to increase their military readiness, they will buy more equipment and technology made in Canada by Canadian workers in shipyards, in labs, and shop floors right across our country. We'll make the drones, the icebreakers, the aerospace technologies, and much more that's needed to build a more secure world. Par la suite, au sommet du G7 à Kananaskis, j'ai annoncé des nouvelles mesures pour appuyer la souveraineté et la sécurité à long terme de l'Ukraine. Nous avons mis en place de nouvelles sanctions visant le régime russe, sa flotte fantôme et ses revenus liés à l'énergie, ainsi que les individus qui facilitent et tirent profit des atrocités commises par le Kremlin. Nous fournissons à l'Ukraine 2 milliards de dollars en financement supplémentaire et nous lui offrons aussi un prêt de 2,3 milliards de dollars qui l'aidera à rebâtir ses infrastructures, ses services publics et sa société civile. Canada is helping to ensure, and through our discussions, I'm very pleased with the discussions and how they evolved, that the new NATO targets, at 5% of GDP, those new NATO targets, are tailored to address new threats and challenges, and that the capabilities required to meet this moment have been the driving factors for those targets. Importantly, the trajectory and the balance of the new NATO defense pledge will be reviewed in 2029 to ensure that the commitments align with the global security landscape. Throughout Canada's history, there have been turning points when the world's fortunes have been in the balance, and each time Canada has chosen to step up, to lead on the path of democracy and freedom. We're once again at one of those moments. If we want the world of tomorrow to be shaped by our values, Canada must be ready. If we want a more secure world, we need a stronger Canada that works with our allies, and today is a very important step to build both. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now going to begin the question period. We'll begin with Steve Chase. First question.
Period.
Hi, Steve Chase from the Globe and Mail. I want to ask you to what extent you have social license, to what extent you think you have public support for what defense experts are saying would be the largest increase in defense spending since the Second World War. We're talking 7% increases a year to reach that $50 billion number. It's going to crowd out other investments. It's going to crowd out requests for healthcare transfer increases. So to what extent do you think you have public support for this?
Well, thanks for the question, Steve. Let me answer this in two ways. The first is to provide some context to the overall 5% number. 1.5% of that 5% is what's called a defense industrial pledge. And as I described very briefly in my remarks, it's much more detail in the public documents, and we can go into more detail. In fact, the Minister of National Defense can go into an exhaustive detail here. But that the industrial element of that much of this we are already doing. This is about building the resilience. What do we do to build the resilience of the country? How much are we spending on our ports, on our transportation infrastructure? How much are we spending in order to develop our critical minerals? What do we do to make sure we have a resilient telecommunications system? These are things that actually we, as government, both federal and provincial governments, these are responsibilities we have today to Canadians and responsibilities that, by and large, we are fulfilling. Now we're going to do a more proper accounting of that and a more strategic set of investments in that. So yes, we'll find gaps. We'll be transparent about that. We'll make up those gaps. So the overall context of the net increase in defense spending is much less than the headline from 2 to 5. First point. Very important point. But we have to show that, and we have to be deliberate and strategic about it, and we will. The second thing is what happens in terms of the, I'll call it the 2 to the 3.5, that number. We absolutely need to establish the political and social, to use the social license, the public support for that. It needs to be, as I indicated in my remarks, including my remarks in that room. First and foremost, we are protecting Canadians. We are protecting Canadians against new threats. I wish we didn't have to, but we do have to, and it is our core responsibility as government. And those threats, we see them, the evolving threat environment, most clearly in the Arctic, but it's also through the Arctic into Canada. And so we're taking our greater responsibilities around that. We have to be clear about what we're doing in order to achieve it. Last point. We're focused on the outcome, the result, protecting Canadians. We're driven by that, not by, with all due respect, sitting in the NATO building, by NATO accountants. And that's part of what's relevant for this 2029 review. We're going to focus on those new threats. We're going to take more of it directly in our responsibility, because they are a responsibility. They're threats on our soil, in our marine areas. And where possible, we're going to work with our partners, but we're also going to assess how well we've done, first and foremost to Canadians, whom we serve, but also to our partners. There'll be a review and there'll be an adjustment at that point.
The follow-up question is more of a reflection on the trip and what you hope to accomplish overall here. You said the other day that Canada is the most European of the non-European countries. You came here to sign a security and defense partnership. Serious question, is there any way, or have you given any thought to possibly trying to chart a path to joining the European Union? Obviously, it's a geographical series of countries, but they also share a philosophy about how to arrange society and how to treat individuals, and they share a lot of values with us. So is that door completely closed to us, or is there anything like being an observer or something that we can get to? Because I have to say that question comes up a lot in talking to Canadians these days.
Interesting. I haven't heard it expressed to me by Canadians, or many Canadians. So the short answer is no. That's not the intent. That's not the pathway we're on. But much of what you said in your question, I would subscribe to, which is that most European and non-European nations. That's not necessarily a comment about the historical makeup of the country, but it's the relative value set, the value on liberty, the value on democracy, the importance of solidarity. We have similar social welfare systems, the importance we put on sustainability, our ability to mutualize, in other words, to work with others and protect, our belief in a rules-based international system, which the footprint of that is shrinking, but it's not immaterial, and we're helping to build that with Europe. And the way we see it, if I could frame it, final comment, and this could be a bigger discussion at the right point, Europe, part of what Europe is focused on as members of the European Union is the so-called ever closer union. We're looking for a closer partnership with that union. So yes, we cooperate much more clearly and broadly to our mutual benefit, but not as a member, but along that continuum. That starts to answer. I don't think that's a final answer to your question, but it's an important element of building out the system, is the way I would say.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Previously, you've spoken about the idea that Canadians will need to make sacrifices to pay for defense spending. Can you outline what sacrifices you're expecting Canadians to make?
Well, I think right now the people who've been making sacrifices have been the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces because they have not been paid to reflect what we are asking them to do. They haven't been operating with the right equipment in many cases. Many cases, their equipment hasn't been working. So the first sacrifices have been there, and we're making up for that and level setting that. And that's an important part of just what we're doing this year in terms of the increase in defense. The second thing I'd say is that the way we're looking at this, and you'll hear more about this in the coming months, that the investments we're making in defense and security, broader security, given the new threats that Canada faces, I think those, we're not at a trade-off. We're not at sacrifices in order to do those. These will be net additive. In other words, more of this will happen in Canada. More of it will help build our economy at the same time as it improves our defense, and we'll get the benefits. The question is, as we move towards later in this decade, and depending on how the threat environment evolves globally, if we are moving to the higher and higher levels of defense spending because that's necessary, then we will have to make considerations about what less the federal government can do in certain cases and how we're going to pay for it. Those trade-offs, I'm going to give you false precision around this, but those trade-offs happen towards the end of the decade into the next decade, and we will be much, much better informed. And if I can go back to Steve Chase's question, the social license element of that, there's going to be a very clear and open conversation about that based on facts and based on what Canadians want.
So in terms of the spending on the 3.5%, it seems as though you're saying that Canadians should not expect that there's going to be a substantial increase in defense spending. Of course, not saying what you've done now, but those things will be coming much later down the line.
I think it'll be, look, one of the things we're very conscious of the government, and I know you were there, I think it was described perhaps by you as the most boring, and I know there's competition for that, but the most boring campaign release during the campaign when we spent a day on defense procurement and how we were going to restructure defense procurement. And part of the reason we're doing that for several reasons. First and foremost, value for money for Canadians. Second, you do it was you.
I'll take your word.
And second, and you're in NATO. This is like really important.
I don't remember that.
And secondly, to have maximum spillovers, like benefits in Canada of that spending to get jobs and others. But thirdly, this issue about how quickly we move up, because one of the things, it's in anything, it's not just in defense, if you all of a sudden start spending a lot more money in one area, you can end up spending a lot more money on rising prices and choke points. That's part of the reason why we're cooperating more closely with the Europeans. Part of the reason why, we continue cooperation with the U.S. in the right areas, but also part of the reason why this increase will happen at a measured pace, or we'll try to do it at a measured pace, and that has that consequence. There you go.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada. C'est quand même substantiel comme marche à monter en termes de dépenses militaires. Est-ce que vous allez demander aux Canadiens de se serrer la ceinture à un moment donné pour y arriver? Est-ce que vous devrez demander aux Canadiens de se serrer la ceinture, ou pour reprendre le terme de Marc, avez-vous l'impression que vous devrez demander aux Canadiens de faire des sacrifices pour y arriver?
OK. Dans ce contexte, pour le moment et pour les prochaines quelques années, jusqu'au... et c'est pas exact, mais on peut pas être assez précis que ça, mais je veux dire que jusqu'au fin de cette décennie, c'est pas des grands sacrifices, parce que les grands montants vont augmenter notre économie en même temps que nous allons les dépenser. On va investir, par exemple, dans les minéraux critiques. On va investir dans des brise-glaces, des navires brise-glaces qui sont créé ici au Canada, bâti ici au Canada, pardon. Alors, pendant les prochaines années, oui, ce sera comme ça. Et le rythme d'accroissement va être assez lent au début, parce qu'il faut être prudent. Le gouvernement doit être prudent au début. Il faut ramasser de l'information. Il faut augmenter la capacité industrielle au Canada et dans d'autres pays de l'OTAN.
Et on a eu l'impression dans ce sommet que le secrétaire général de l'OTAN a tout fait pour plaire à M. Trump. Il lui a dit qu'il jamais de président avait réussi ce qu'il réussissait aujourd'hui. Est-ce que c'était trop? Est-ce qu'il en a trop fait, le secrétaire général de l'OTAN, pour plaire à M. Trump?
Ouais. Je peux parler pour le gouvernement du Canada. Nous faisons des mesures pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Et c'est afin de mieux protéger les Canadiens et les Canadiennes.
Your goals for NATO and Article 5 today?
We're with them all the way. I mean, if you take a look at the numbers, we're with them, and they have very big things to announce today. I don't know if you've taken the vote or you're going to take the vote, but I've been asking them to go up to 5% for a number of years, and they're going up to 5%, and that's a big, from 2%. And a lot of people didn't even pay the 2%. So I think it's going to be very big news. NATO is going to become very strong with us. And I appreciate doing it. Perhaps you want to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me first, before I go to the spending, I just want to recognize your decisive action on Iran.
Thank you.
You are a man of strength, but you're also a man of peace. And the fact that you are now also successful in getting this ceasefire done between Israel and Iran, I really want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
And I think this is important for the whole world. Then on spending, it's absolutely true. I want to state here, without President Trump, this would not have happened in 3 stages. When you became president in 2016, 2017, you forced Europeans and Canadians to pay more. At this moment, the result of that phase is 1 trillion extra aggregate defense spending by the Canadians and the Europeans. Then came phase 2, when you became president in January last year. Phase 2 is that all the countries not yet on 2% have now committed to the 2%. This is the old goal from Wales in 2014. 7 were not on 2%. Some were saying somewhere in the 2030s. Now this year, all of them, including Canada, including Italy, including Belgium, they have all now committed to the 2%. And now comes the big splash. Today, we will decide to go to 5%. We have to keep ourselves safe from our adversaries, but also because it is fair to equalize with the United States. With this 5%, the Europeans and the Canadians will equalize their defense spending with the United States. So this is not about American taxpayers paying more. This is about Europeans, Canadians paying more. And again, this would not have happened. I'm really saying this here, and some people might criticize me, but then when I speak with them, they all say, yes, you're right. This would not have happened if you would not have been elected in 2016 and re-elected last year and back into office in January. So I want to thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great victory for everybody, I think. And we will be equalized very shortly, and that's the way it has to be. And it's going to be a lot of money, too, a lot of defense.
It's trillions extra.
Yeah, and we have a great relationship, and we've had a great relationship from the beginning. Highly respected man, and Yeah, we appreciate you being here too, everybody. We really do. We have a tremendous group of people on my left and a tremendous group of people on my right. They might be even better than my people. I don't know. Let's have a fight. Let's figure it out. Anyway, but we appreciate it.
More happening with this.
We've had a tremendous relationship, Mark and I. And we've really worked on this subject for a long time.
Yeah.
When Biden was here, it just died. It just died like everything else died. And now it's, you're going to take, I guess, a vote today, right?
Absolutely. Today we will decide unanimously to do this. That's my absolute conviction.
So we can't talk about it until the vote's taken, because sometimes, you know, strange things happen with those. But I think you're going to
I'm not too worried.
I think you're going to do very well. Everyone's very happy about it. Go ahead, yes.
President, how is the Iran-Israel ceasefire going, in your opinion?
I think very good. I think very good. Israel came back yesterday. I was so proud of them. Because they came back, you know, they went out because they felt there was a violation, and technically they were right, but it just wouldn't have worked out very well. And they brought the planes back. They had gone on to another journey because there was a little bit of a violation, and I said, you got to get them back. And they came back, and it was a great thing, and it's going very well.
Mr. President, what are your sort of response to the former minister saying he still wants to enrich nuclear?
Hello, Katie. She's so great, this one. Any question she asks, I'll answer. Well, maybe I better not say that. What was your question?
What is your response to the Iranian foreign minister continuing to say Iran will enrich uranium and pursue nuclear weapons?
Well, I don't know if they've said that, but I'll tell you, the last thing they want to do is enrich anything right now. They want to recover. And we won't let that happen, number one, militarily.
Imagine peace in the Middle East.
I think we'll end up having some kind of relationship with Iran. I see it. Look, I've had a relationship over the last 4 days. They agreed to the ceasefire. And it was a very equal agreement. They both said, that's enough. They both said it. But no, they won't do that. The last thing they want to do, Katie, is enrich. They're not looking to, they're not, can you imagine after all of that, they're going to say, oh, let's go and do a bomb. You know, there could be a day in the future, and then somebody else taking our place will be saying, don't do it. And maybe they won't do it as well, I don't know. But they're not going to have a bomb, and they're not going to enrich. And we believe all of the stuff is down there. We don't think they had nearly the time, because to get that out is a very difficult thing. It's not like moving a package or taking this carpet up and moving it. It's very difficult. It's very dangerous to do. We believe it's all down there. We had a tremendous victory, a tremendous hit, and because of that, I don't think they would have been down there, because they knew we were coming. When they know we're coming, they're not going to be down in that, 30 stories underground. So. No, I think it was just a tremendous victory for everybody, including Iran. Look,
Yeah, okay, so just, we're going to put this window back up. Something.
Your goals for NATO and Article 5 today.
it was obliteration. It was a virtual
There you
obliteration.
go.
When you take a
Back
look at
up.
the ground above, don't forget, the flame is all underground. But everything above, if you look at the before and the after picture, everything above is burned black. The trees, everything. There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that, the fire goes right over it. I believe it was total obliteration. I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast. If it would have taken 2 weeks, maybe, but it's very hard to remove that kind of material. Very hard and very dangerous for them to remove it. Plus, they knew we were coming, and if they know we're coming, they're not going to be down there. There aren't too many people that are going to be down there. Pete, do you have something to say about that?
Well, Mr. President, when you talk to the people who built the bombs, understand what those bombs can do, and deliver those bombs, they landed precisely where they were supposed to, so it was a flawless mission.
Flawless.
Right down where we knew they needed to enter, and given the 30,000 pounds of explosives and capability of those munitions, it was devastation underneath Fordo. And the amount of munitions, 6 per location, any assessment that tells you it was something otherwise is speculating with other motives. And we know that because when you actually look at the report, by the way, it was a top secret report, it was preliminary, it was low confidence. All right, so this isn't, you make assessments based on what you know. They
And
don't,
it said it could be very devastating, very serious.
moderate
in
to
that report.
severe, and we believe far more likely severe and obliterated. So this is a political motive here.
Is there a leak investigation?
Of course, we're doing a leak investigation with the FBI right now because this information is for internal purposes, battle damage assessments, and CNN and others are trying to spin it to make the president look bad when this was an overwhelming success.
We had a tremendous success, and this is the New York Times. I call it the failing New York Times. It's gone to hell. And CNN, which is, you know, very few people are watching. And you would think they'd do the opposite. You would think they'd want to say, this was an unbelievable success. And the thing that hurts me is it's really demeaning to the pilots and the people that put that whole thing together, the generals. That was a perfect operation. And when you look at the holes, and this was done from 52,000 feet, there was no moon, there was no light, and those three holes are right together. And also, and nobody talks about this, we shot 30 Tomahawks from submarines, in particular one submarine, but that was 400 miles away. Mm-hmm. And every one of those Tomahawks hit within a foot of where they were supposed to hit, took out a lot of buildings that Israel wasn't able to get. We took them out with Tomahawks. We don't even talk about that. This was a devastating attack, and it knocked them for a loop. And, you know, if it didn't, they wouldn't have settled. If they had won, if we didn't take it out, they wouldn't have settled. Somebody mentioned that to me last night. If that thing wasn't devastated, they would have never settled. Marco, do you have something to say?
No, first of all this stuff about the intelligence, this is what a leaker is telling you the intelligence says. That's the game these people play. They read it, and then they go out and characterize it the way they want it characterized, and they're leakers. This is the game they play. So that's number one. Number two, here's a fact. The conversion facility, which you can't do a nuclear weapon without a conversion facility, we can't even find where it is, where it used to be on the map. You can't even find where it used to be because the whole thing is just blackened out. It's gone.
It's wiped out.
It's wiped out. Then we dropped 12 of the strongest bombs on the planet right down the hole in two places. Everything underneath that mountain is in bad shape. And I refer you to the statement of the IAEA, Mr. Grossi. You know what he said? He said there was Iran, the way it looked the day before the attack, and what their nuclear program looks like now. Two very different things. They are way behind where they were just 7 days ago. Now, anything in the world can be rebuilt, but now we know where it is. And if they try to rebuild it, we'll have options there as well. But all this leaker stuff, these leakers are professional stabbers. That's what they are. They go out and they read this stuff, and then they tell you what it says against the law, but they characterize it for you in a way that's absolutely false. There's no way Iran comes to the table if somehow nothing had happened. This was complete and total obliteration. They're in bad shape. They are way behind today compared to where they were just 7 days ago because of what the president did.
Marco, can I just alert you to one other aspect? So the great thing is you took out the nuclear capability of Iran. This was crucial. You did it in a way which is extremely impressive. But the signal sends to the rest of the world that this president, when it comes to it, yes, he is a man of peace, but if necessary, he is willing to use strength, the enormous strength of the American military. So I think that signal to the rest of the world, this is far beyond Iran, is extremely important. So let me also point us to that aspect of what happens.
They went down, Iran went down to the site afterwards. They said it's so devastated, and they settled when they saw what we did to it. And frankly, if we didn't do that, they would have had a lot of ammunition to keep going. They wouldn't have settled. Somebody brought that up, and 2 Iranians went down to see it, and they called back, and they said, this place is gone. So it's just fake news by CNN, which has got no ratings. It's a failed network. Anybody here from CNN, by the way? Because you're a really disgraceful network. MSNBC, I think, is actually worse. But they're all pretty bad. But yours is good, Katie, I'll tell you. You know what Marco reminded me that he did such a nice job there. It was 9 years ago I had to debate this guy. He was not easy. I think he even got better. But when you were into your little thing, I said, this is when I had to debate this guy. You think it's easy to debate him? It's not easy.
How long do you think that the Iranian nuclear program has been put back by these strikes? Years or totally?
I think basically decades, because I don't think they'll ever do it again. I just don't think they're going to. I think they're going to take their oil. They're going to have some missiles, and they'll have some defense. I think they've had it. I mean, they just went through hell. I think they've had it. The last thing they want to do is enrich. They've been trying to do it. By the way, it's hard to enrich. And, you know, when you look at a site like that, very, very hard to build. Very, very hard, very expensive. They spent trillions of dollars trying to do this thing, and they didn't come up with it. And we're actually getting along with them very well right now. But had we not succeeded with that hit ended the war. That hit ended the war. I don't want to use an example of Hiroshima. I don't want to use an example of Nagasaki. But that was essentially the same thing. That ended that war. This ended that with the war. If we didn't take that out, they'd be fighting right now.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
If the Iranians do rebuild, would the United States...
If they rebuild?
Would the United States strike again? And I have a
Sure.
question about Russia.
But I'm not going to have to worry about that. It's gone for years. It's very tough to rebuild because the whole thing is collapsed. In other words, inside, it's all collapsed. Nobody can get in to see it because it's collapsed. You can't go in to see a room that has, 10 million tons of rock in it. And the tunnels are totally collapsed.
Would they rebuild?
Well, they've already looked at the tunnels. This was an unbelievable hit by genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group, and not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally, and it knocked it out. The original word that I use, I guess it got us in trouble because it's a strong word. It was obliteration. And you'll see that. And it's going to come out. Israel is doing a report on it now, I understand. And I was told that they said it was total obliteration. They have guys that go in there after the hit, and they say it was total obliteration. And, I don't want it for me. I want it for the pilots. I want it for the military. They did such a good job. If you were in the Situation Room with me, with the generals and all of the people that did such a good job, and then they get demeaned by these idiots at CNN who can't get ratings. The place is dying. Nobody wants to even waste their time going on their shows. So they form with the New York Times, who's dying also. Without Trump, you wouldn't have a New York Times.
And then just changing gears to your meeting with Zelensky later today, can you give us any preview of what the two of you might be discussing?
No, well, we'll discuss the obvious. We'll discuss his difficulty. He's got a little difficulty, Zelensky. He's a nice guy. I mean, I'm going to meet him today. I don't know. I assume we're going to be discussing Ukraine.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like the most likely subject.
Any restart of talks there or anything that you might do?
Well, we're going to see. I mean, I've spoken to Putin a lot, and he actually was very nice. He volunteered help on, as you know, on Iran. I said, no, I don't need help on Iran. I need help on Russia. Okay? I said, do me a favor. Help us on Russia, not on Iran. But he was very nice. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk. I think progress is being made. I think great progress is being made on Gaza. I think because of this attack that we made, I think we're going to have some very good news. I was talking to Steve Witkoff, who, by the way, is terrific, and who knows more about this subject than anybody, the subject of what we were just talking about. He was on last night with Jesse and with Laura and with Sean. And boy, Susie has a great take on it. He just explains it so easily. He's really very knowledgeable. But he did tell me that Gaza is very close.
Thomas, we have to go to the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, shall we go?
One follow-up on Iran. Both you and Secretary Rubio and Hague mentioned the leader. But can you clarify, is the intelligence correct or is the intelligence wrong?
Well, the intelligence was very inconclusive. The intelligence says we don't know. It could have been very severe. That's what the intelligence says. So I guess that's correct. But I think we can take the we don't know. It was very severe. It was obliteration. And you'd think that a media outlet would say, isn't that a great thing? I mean, more importantly for the pilots, for the military, you take their guts out. You take their absolute guts out. They had a tremendous attack. It was a complete obliteration. The other team, the other group, Iran, said, let's stop this. And you know what? Israel said it too. Very smart. They fought like hell, and then they said, let's stop. And they're going to build themselves. And I really see it as sticking. I mean, we may do papers on it, Marco. Maybe we're going to do papers. I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
I think we have to join the others.
Yes, we're going to join some other group. Yes, thank you. Katie, one
last question. Do you believe
she's so good. That's the only reason I type.
Thank you, Mr. President.
She used to be very difficult, but now she's go ahead.
Do you believe that this strike on the Iranian nuclear program will lead to the release of the hostages in Gaza?
I think that it helped a little bit. It showed a lot of power. Yeah, I think it helped, but we're going to get separately, even before this, we were very close to making a deal on Gaza. I think this helped, yes. Okay, thank you, Katie. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Your goals for NATO and Article 5 today.
We're with them all the way. I mean,
Goed.
Good morning. I'm very excited about today. I believe this will be a transformational summit. Obviously, very much concentrating on spending, making sure that NATO collectively has the money and the capabilities to indeed, given our long-term threat of Russia, but also the massive build-up of the military in China and the fact that North Korea, China, Iran are supporting the war effort in Ukraine. It's really important that we spend more, so that will be number one on the agenda today, a new plan when it comes to spending over the coming years. Of course, defense industrial production. We know that we are lacking a defense industrial base which is producing sufficiently. So we have fantastic companies, but they have to put in the extra production lines, they have to put in the extra shifts in making sure that we produce the ammunition and all the items we need. And Ukraine will be big at the summit today. Will be discussed, making sure that Ukraine over the coming years will continue to count on the support of NATO countries to keep them in the fight, but also make sure that we can bring Ukraine to a durable and lasting peace. So a transformational summit, looking forward to it. And of course, hope to see you later today. I can now take a few questions, and then at the end, we will see each other at the press conference. And I see that CNBC wants to start.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Steve Tippett, CNBC, as you know, sir. Look, there's a lot of questions about Spain. There's a lot of questions about nations that do not feel they have the money in their budget to get to 2%, let alone 3.5%, let alone 5% in total as well. Do you fear that Spain could scupper this meeting and actually, sir, despite all your huge diplomatic efforts, incur the ire, the wrath of the United States?
No, I don't. I'm not worried about that. Of course, these are difficult decisions. Let's be honest. I mean, politicians have to make choices in scarcity. And this is not easy because 7-8 countries at the start of this year not at 2%. They will now reach the 2% this year. Many of those countries said we will do it somewhere in the 2030s. They've now committed to do it this year. And already we added in an aggregate of $1 trillion since 2016. Since Trump 45 started his first presidency. But today, and this is the third stage, we will add trillions extra with this new plan. But of course, you're right. The countries have to find the money. It's not easy. These are political decisions. I totally recognize that. But at the same time, there is absolute conviction with my colleagues at the table that given the threat from the Russians, given the international security situation, there is no alternative. We've got to do this, really.
Trump back Article 5?
For me, there is absolute clarity that the United States is totally committed to NATO, totally committed to Article 5, and yes, there is also an expectation, which will be fulfilled today, that the Canadians and the Europeans will speed up their spending, making sure that we not only are able to defend ourselves against the Russians and others, but also to equalize. And this is fair, that we spend the same as the US is spending. Sir, yes. The big thing about Article 5, and the good thing about Article 5, is that it is clear that we defend each other when we are attacked. But you will always get all these questions, yes, but if this cyber attack or this hybrid attack, we never go into those details.
Secretary General, you had dinner with Donald Trump yesterday. In what mood was he? And
excellent mood, and the king and queen were hosting a fantastic dinner in this. And I was so proud to sit in that Orange Hall, which is basically exemplar. I'm a historian, so this is about the history of the Dutch Republic. 1648, the Münster Peace Deal, and the king made a fantastic speech. You have seen it, I hope. I was also able to say a few words, so I think it was a great dinner.
Nederland dit allemaal gaan betalen? 5%, meneer Rutte.
Nederland is op 2 of 3 na het rijkste land van de wereld. Als wij het al niet kunnen betalen, wat kunnen we dan van de anderen? Wij zijn schatrijk. Dankzij verstandig beleid over de laatste jaren.
Gaat het pijn doen, meneer Rutte? Staat de NAVO er onder Trump beter voor dan onder Biden?
Ik denk dat de NAVO na vandaag er sterker voor staat dan ooit sinds de val van de Berlijnse muur.
Meneer Rutte, heeft u nog meer persoonlijke berichtjes aan Trump gestuurd de afgelopen nacht die misschien die openbaar worden?
Oh, spannend. We gaan het kijken. Maar ik heb er geen bezwaar tegen.
Maar heeft u er wel internationaal kritiek op gekregen?
Nee.
Want u toch een beetje schaamteloos. U zei het, maar de Europese landen die hebben die NAVO-norm die mooi dankzij u gehaald.
Ja, is toch waar?
Wat de Europese landen zoals Spanje die zeggen...
Hey, but listen, it's totally true. Would you really think that the 7 or 8 countries, not at 2%, at the beginning of this year, would have reached the 2% if Trump would not have been elected president of the United States? Do you really think that, of course, there is a threat from the Russians, China, etc., but that it would be doable to reach this commitment of 5% today? And I'm hopeful and cautiously optimistic we will get there. If Trump would not have been elected president, so I think what I said in the text message to him, totally fine that he published it, please, but totally fine that he published it, I think is a statement of fact.
Sharing this message. Are you okay with him sharing those SMS? Isn't that a little embarrassing?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What is in that text message is a statement of fact, and I'm totally fine that he shared it.
Meneer Rutte,
The attacks on Iran appear to be less positive, less successful than they looked before. Do you reconsider your congratulations?
No, not at all. And the 14 huge bombs dropped on the nuclear facility of Iran, I think this was crucial to really do everything possible to take out the nuclear capability of the Iranians, which NATO has always said Iran should not get its hands on. And therefore this decisive action by the United States was so important.
Secretary General, yesterday you told allies to stop worrying about the United States.
Yes.
But how can the allies stop worrying when Trump keeps relativizing Article 5 again and again?
I would think, look what the United States is doing, what Donald Trump is doing. They are spending almost $1 trillion on defense. They are by far the biggest contributor to NATO. They are delivering all the key enablers for NATO, also here in Europe. I mean, they are an important ally. They are by far the biggest ally in NATO. They are over 50% of the total NATO economy. But what we now will do over the coming years is to bring down, step by step, shift the burden away from the United States, more towards the Europeans and the Canadians, which I think is fair. And in the meantime, we will also equalize the spending. I think we now have to go because colleagues of mine, leaders of and presidents. I'm not a leader or a president. I'm only a Secretary General, but still former colleagues of mine will enter this building and want to speak to you. But I thought the children were here. They are there. Yes, please. You ask the last question. Am I excited? I'm excited, but to a level where I can still control it. Thank you.
Okay. Another shot here with Trump. Just do the last round with Trump. Just one more time. Watch this. And, I spelled that one really wrong. Mark Rutte, is he not one of the most outstanding leaders we've had in NATO all time. You know, the others were good. There's not saying that, but like the Trump whisperer or whatever you want to call him is definitely a factor that has going on. 5%, getting Canada, us to spend 5% to commit to it. It's just, that's a feat amongst all on its own. Never mind that we just actually committed to our previous commitment that for 20 years we never actually stood by. Now, SAFE is what is basically now Canada has a deal with it. It's SAFE, okay, and it's European and Canada now. Even Rutte's right on it. So $2 trillion of defense spending. Europe is spending $2 trillion, and Canadian companies now can bid on all of it. So we will have, you know what I mean? And we're also upping our spending, so obviously there will be that. But the $2 trillion, and America isn't in SAFE, so I imagine there will be some purchases. Obviously, there are going to be purchases from the States from certain equipment that you can't get anywhere else. You know, the THAAD and other Patriot, maybe missiles. But their basic idea is to get the European and the European and the Canadians, the manufacturing systems going. Well, America is also doing its own thing. Like you said, America is over 50% of NATO spending. And obviously with this Golden Dome, that there hasn't been much talk about the Golden Dome. It's about, like Trump said, like he says, it can be $61 billion. And I believe what the Golden Dome is a start. What is going to happen is the Golden Dome will start something very big, because it's space, it's naval assets, and it's fixed assets on ground. So it's you know, the triple entente, I kind of think of it as. So when that happens, when that gets built, if that gets built, you know, I think pretty sure it's going to happen. But when that gets built, more allied countries will want to purchase that system after they work out. I don't want to say bugs, but after they get the system down and everything working all fine, I believe it will be something that they'll be able to sell other countries. Like right now, Israel has, you know, everyone knows this, the Iron Dome, right? It's David sling, you know, the Moses arrow. All of these things together make the Iron Dome. Well, this idea that Trump is having is going to be the next stage of level of defense system. So knocking out any missile that comes, basically. So Israel will probably be the first one to buy it, or want to be the first one to buy it. And in other countries like Turkey with their missiles, there was a missile thing going on with them before. That would be another country. You know, they're in a tough neighborhood. You know, Taiwan. I don't know. Japan, definitely. So this could be a system that would be marketable, to use military and marketing together, but to be marketable to other allies within NATO and on the outskirts of NATO, as Japan is, Australia, and just, you know, to do this. Because basically what happens is with these Kinjals or these supersonic missiles, they can traverse the Earth like Superman. They can go around the Earth and then they target. So it's not like the old system of the Dewey system or NORAD, or even the David Sling and you know, the Iron Dome. This is as much, it's from space, some tracking. So it won't be, so they'll be able to track it from a longer distance. It won't be able to skim through the radar by flying around the Earth, which is amazing. But that's what these new missiles can do. It's a big system increase, and it's a big worry. Everyone's scared about this thing, and so this would be a system that they could counter that. That's it. There's a system that can counter this newest threat that's on the horizon. Obviously, we're not at war or anything with Russia or with China. Obviously, there are trading partners. Well, at least China is. Russia's under heavy sanctions. Iran. It looks like they are out of the game of proxy. I'm hoping that they put their money into prosperity in their country. It would be nice to see that instead of the military and the proxies. Gaza. Trump said something about Gaza with Witkoff. Witkoff believes, I didn't see it last night on Fox. I was doing other things. And Witkoff was on, and so I recommend everyone watches that. I'm going to. See what happens there, or what's going to happen there with Gaza. Definitely the Iranians are probably not going to fund them anymore or anytime soon. And so Trump said that Witkoff says they're close to a deal. I hope that Trump's vision, I really, really bought into it, Trump's vision of building Gaza into a beautiful resort happens. It would, because my belief is, and I know it from personal, it's easier to fall into despair when you're living in rubble and there's no one building it. So if you're living in rubble and it's just, and there's no work and there's nothing, it's easy to fall into despair and whatever Hamas creates, not nice things, bad feelings. It's easy for that. So if they were to have like lot more work than people, right? You want a job, lots of work, skilled, unskilled, whatever, building, all in the construction. And then afterwards, like a resort place, a happy place, like Dubai is, because it is a beautiful location, perfect location. To have it like that, it I believe, would eliminate most, not all, but most of the angst people have of anger and the perpetual cycle. Okay, let's hear what the Don has to say. Well, I think we heard it. You can go back in time. I think that's what we have for today. Like,